This is the third and final part of 30 lessons from self-publishing 30 non-fiction books on Amazon. So, before we get started, if you want to get an email with a timestamped overview every time I release a new video like this, then head over to deliberate-practice.com, sign up for my email list. There's other content there, plus there are some thank you goodies for signing up, and there'll be more coming in the very near future. I'll have some words about that in upcoming videos. Caveat before we get started, although the Writing Vault is about fiction, I've published 30 non-fiction books across 2 author names on Amazon in the last 4.5 years or so, and I've learned a metric shit ton that I wanted to share. All of these lessons are just little kernels of information, and you can take them, you can apply them to your scenario, because your scenario will be unique to you and different from mine, but you can use my information, my lessons, my teachings as a starting point on how you can leverage publishing books on Amazon for yourself. Some of the lessons I'll talk about will apply to fiction writers and some won't. For part 1, see part 1 of this series for lessons 1 to 10 and part 2 for lessons 11 to 20. Okay, lesson 21. More book-based revenue streams. We already talked about paperback, hardcover, ebooks and audio. If you're not doing all of those, they're the low-hanging fruit, as it were. The hardest one of those to do is probably audio. Once you've written your books, I haven't done audio myself yet, but that's purely because of my 30 books, 28 of them are music books, and they don't lend themselves to be translated into audio format. But it is something I'm going to be experimenting with, and I'll mention a piece of software called Publisher Rocket later in this video. And Publisher Rocket, if you use that to just keep your eye on the market, audio sales, especially for fiction, but also for non-fiction, are the one area of Amazon that's been growing year on year for the last several years. So you definitely want to get those dominoes lined up before you start thinking about more book-based revenue streams. But if your market is big enough, translations are the next way to build more revenue, because you've got a book. You probably need to pay a translator. I know that AI will translate things for you. My best, so if you're going to translate, let's say you're going to translate your book into Spanish. I think Spanish is the second biggest language market on Amazon behind English. If you know any Spanish people, if there's someone you can find on a forum or something that you've interacted with, or you can pay $50 or go to Fiverr and make a job of, I've written a book, I need someone who speaks and reads English and Spanish to read 3 chapters and tell me what this translation's like. Translate 3 chapters of your book into Spanish using whichever AI you think is the best for translating, and then with this job find out if this person thinks that translation is good enough. I don't think AI is there yet for translating books to a high enough standard, so you may have to pay someone a translation fee. I don't know how much that will be. It will depend on how many words we're talking about, but the point is, you've got a cover already, all you would have to do would be to respell the words in whatever language you're translating into, and then you translate all the content, get it laid out, and probably it will cost you between $500 and $1,000, and you've got another book making revenue. And I mentioned Publisher Rocket. You can look on different markets and see how much books like yours are selling, and whether getting translated is a financially viable move. But once you've recouped your initial investment, you're then just on gravy, and everything else that you paid, everything else that comes in is just pure. Obviously, Amazon take their cut, but from once they've paid out their royalty, everything else is just profit. And translations are an easy way to generate more revenue streams from your existing books. Again, I say if your market is big enough. For me, my bass guitar market, which is my main one, it probably isn't big enough to justify the cost of translating into other languages. Although the one I've always wondered about is Japanese, because the Japanese music instrument music theory, music exercises market is enormous, and whether translating that into Japanese would be viable or not, I don't actually know. But I'm really interested in one day I may try. But so when you've released some books and you're getting some decent revenues, have a look at translations. That could be the next way to increase the revenue streams. You can also create bundles. So bundles tend to be ebook only, but they can be done physically as well. So what you do is, I've seen a guy in the guitar space and he has 3 books on the same subject and they're all $20 each or something like that. And so what he did was, after he got the third one, they were all, I think they were all 100-page books, and the maximum we can print, I think, is 300 pages. Might be slightly wrong on the page numbers. This is something I've not done, but I saw this guy doing it, and what he does is he puts the 3 together into one book and sells it for the cost of a book and a half. So someone's getting 3 books worth of info for the cost of a book and a half. So it's another way to create sales and revenue out of material you've already written and created. And with ebooks, you can actually do it all together, or you could put it into one file. I've seen it done several ways. I saw it first with serial fiction, the serial fiction publishers and writers who came out at the start of the kind of the Kindle Gold Rush, 2010, 2011. They would release a book a month, sorry, not a book a month, an episode a month, and then at the end of their series, or an episode a week, or whatever their publication schedule was, and then at the end of the run they would have a complete season volume as well. So people could either buy things individually or buy the complete season. So using your existing writing and bundling it together. Another thing I perhaps should have put on here, especially for non-fiction, which I didn't, was creating your own workbook of if your book warrants having a workbook. That's another way of leveraging your existing content to create more book-based revenue streams. Here's another one, which is lesson 22, limited editions. You can also create limited editions for your true fans. I spoke about this in one of the episodes one of the lessons in part 2, that I create spiral bound limited editions, which I use for my beta readers. But you can think of this as like the director's cut version. You can have bonus content. You can make it more valuable to the people who really like what you're doing. You can send them yourself and sign them. All that kind of thing adds value to something that you've already written. And you can do some kind of premium binding. I mentioned I do spiral binding. The guy to really look at and keep your eye on and follow him just to see how he does this is Brandon Sanderson. He often has Kickstarters and he does really interesting things, and he releases now he has a rabid fan base, which really helps, but he releases like $200 leather bound versions of his books with unique illustrations and drawings and maps, and there's merch as well, all sorts of things. One of his Kickstarters, I think his most profitable one, you'll have to check the numbers on Google. I'm going to say around $20 to $25 million, something like that. It may have been slightly more, slightly less. I forget the precise figures, but he's worth following just for that and getting ideas. You don't have to do it on the scale that he does it. If you bring out a limited edition of something that's $50, it costs you $5 or $10 to fulfill, and 500 people buy it, you can do the math for yourself. Lesson 23, track sales cycles. So you're going to need to go through around 2 full years of decent sales to understand the seasonal effects on your niche and where book sales will be high, where book sales will be low. As a generalization for most niches, you'll find that the fourth quarter, which is October, November, December, book sales start to ramp up to December for Christmas. And you've also got Black Friday thrown in there as well in the US, which is Black Friday has kind of rolled out and is now something that's ubiquitous across territories. Also, January is usually pretty good. I never understood that, and of course, it's like a lot of these things. When someone explains it to you, it becomes obvious. One of the reasons for January sales numbers being good is that people get gift vouchers from Amazon as a Christmas present, and they spend them in January. So those 4 months are normally good. Normally for me, and often for other people, I find kind of June, July, August not to be great, and it kind of dips down to June, and then from August it starts ramping up in September. So I mentioned in lesson 2 about Amazon inventing Prime Day. I'm convinced they invented Prime Day to go, shit, sales are terrible in July. Let's manufacture something that brings our sales numbers up so this quarter's not dead. And it definitely works. I mentioned how it worked for me, and when I first did it, it still works for me, and it can be done very simply. It doesn't take a lot of work, but you do need to understand your niche sales cycle. So if you're a fiction writer and you write the kind of fiction that people take to the beach, you might find that July is a really good month for you. But until you've got the data, you don't actually know. But when you do know when book sales are slow, you could just go, that's how it is. Things will pick up in the autumn, in the fall, in the winter, whenever it is for you. Or you can do what Amazon does and try and create your own equivalent of Prime Day. And see, in lesson 18 in part 2, I talked about dynamic pricing, and you can use dynamic pricing to help you do this. So that's a way. Once you understand your sales cycles, you might be able to go, right, this month's going to be poor. Historically, it's poor. Let's make it a little bit better. Lesson 24. You have to promote your books. Although, and I talked about this in lesson 2, or part 2 rather, if you start getting sales, Amazon will do some of the heavy lifting for you. They've got custom data sets of people who buy books, bass guitar books, people who buy this particular kind of bass guitar book, and those kind of people might get emails about your books, and much more likely to if they've bought other ones of your books. So they do stuff, but you have to not rely on them and rely on your own agency. And there's basically two ways: paid and organic. Both have got advantages and disadvantages. You could create, and people have, entire courses on how to do paid and organic promotions of your books. But it's something that you need to have more than a passing understanding of. You need to look at both of these. Paid ads, the two primary platforms that seem to be mentioned by the people who talk about this, is either Amazon's own platform or Facebook. I've used Amazon's platform and it works. I don't spend an enormous amount of money, but I just spend enough just to keep things ticking over, keep impressions going, keeping your books top of mind. Facebook I've never used for paid ads for books. I can't comment on how they work. I know there are authors who say they work for them, but you need to do your own diligence. I can neither recommend nor unrecommend, or whatever the word is for that. My brain's starting to fade already and my voice is already cracking. Organic promotion. I found the best way to create organic promotional materials is to use YouTube, and to kind of create videos that people in your niche like and would watch, and then put mentions of your books in there where it's appropriate. Definitely better for me than Twitter or Substack. Those are the three that I've really tried. I've not tried TikTok. I know TikTok gets some love from some people, so maybe TikTok will be it for you. So keep an open mind, but what you don't want to do is get caught in the organic content hamster wheel where you're constantly creating organic content. Find a cadence that suits you and doesn't keep you from other important tasks. So you don't want to be making 50 videos a week. There are ways of doing things more efficiently. So one thing you could do is you can make one long form piece of content a week and create 10 shorts from it, and then maybe do another 10 shorts or something like that. But again, that's something you'll have to work out, but I think you need to do both. And if you're building up an email list, it doesn't hurt to run internal promotions combined with dynamic pricing, or combined with exclusive bonuses, as a way of just stimulating sales, because every time you stimulate sales or your books get reviews, it's a signal to Amazon algorithm, and every positive signal helps. Talking of reviews, lesson 25, using reviews as part of your promotional strategies. When you've got multiple books, tracking reviews and how many reviews your books are getting does get harder. You don't get any notifications from Amazon saying, hey, you've got a new review on this book, blah blah blah, and here's a link to it. You've got to go and manually look at it, which is a bit of a pain in the ass. So I tend to stick to the Amazon US store. I don't look at other stores. What is nice is they show reviews from other stores as well there. But what you should do is take screenshots of all reviews, both good and bad, and you can use both in your promotional materials. The good reviews are obviously social proof. You can post them on, you can post them in videos, you can post them in, if you've got Twitter or anything like that kind of social media following, you can say, hey look, I just got a great review on this book, you go check it out on Amazon, or however you want to do that. But you can also use the bad ones to promote your books as well, because you can FISC them, and if you don't know what FISCing is, go and Google that, but be careful how you spell it, otherwise you might get some interesting content coming up. The other thing is, and I often do it on my YouTube videos for my bass guitar channel, is when I introduce myself, I just say to people, if you don't know who I am, just go to this book on Amazon and read the reviews. It happens to be my best-selling book on Amazon. It has great reviews, and if I was to choose a book that I was going to say to someone who's never met me before, which book would most best represent me as a bass guitar teacher, that's the book I say go and check out. And I don't know, I say that on every video. Maybe the increased sales I've had on that book since I started doing it is not a coincidence. So there's lots of ways you can use your reviews as part of your promotion without them being right in the face of your customers. You can do it in a way that's respectful and not overtly self-promotional. Lesson 26, you can use books as bonuses for bigger ticket items. This is something I only recently discovered this year, or I thought about it and hadn't worked out how to implement it, and I did this year. Essentially, it's simple to use your books with the author copies as high value bonuses, especially if you've written a bunch of books. And the Amazon price of your book sets the value for the customer. For me, I can give $100 worth of books as a bonus, and it can be fulfilled for around $15. So it makes my higher ticket offer much more valuable to my clients. I mean, it's a simple way for me to make that offer much more valuable without eating into the profits of the product, because the bonus is relatively simple and cheap to fulfill. Book funnel. I put question mark, question mark, question mark. I've never done this, but I kind of really want to. And how it works is use a book with something like a free plus shipping offer. So there'll be an advert on Facebook. Sorry, I just need some coffee. There'll be an advert on Facebook, we'll say, with a picture of your cover or something eye-catching, and we'll say, hey, get my book for 1 cent or free, you just pay shipping. And so they go to a checkout page, and your book, which is normally $25 on Amazon or whatever it is just $7.99 for covering the shipping. And then what happens is you upsell people who've bought that to higher priced products. Now, I don't want to get too much into this, but it can be done in a really sleazy way where you get your first thing and then there's like a million upsells saying, hey, you bought this, you might want this, and if you say no, they say, well, how about this for a slightly lesser price, and you might get 6 or 7 different upsells or downsells or side sells depending on what your familiarity with marketing terminology is, and I find that to be really sleazy, but it can be done in a non-sleazy and non-salesy way, and I think, as with all these things, if you play the long game, and the long game is you write a quality book, you try and get it into people's hands who don't know about you, and then you rely on the fact that the quality book does the heavy lifting of getting people to know, like, and trust you, and want to perhaps continue their educational relationship with you by buying other things, whether that's more books or whether it's courses or products or coaching. Obviously depends on what your back end and high ticket items are, but this is something I've always wanted to do, and just never got round to trying, and I put it in here because it might be something that you go, right, I'm leaping onto that. And there's various ways of fulfilling it. There are companies you can find who will take the orders and just fulfill them for you. There are other ways of doing it too, but it's definitely a way that you can get buyers onto your list quickly, and hopefully those buyers will go through exposure to your educational materials and your book. Remember, number one goal, write a great book. I'll reiterate that in the summary, but hopefully that will move them from being someone who doesn't know about you to someone who's taken a chance and bought something, to someone who wants to continue their journey with you and maybe go all the way down the path to being a true fan. Lesson 28. Amazon has other selling tools that you don't need to use, but they're free, and even if they only make a 1% difference, that's probably worth it for most people. And when you factor in, so a 1% difference would mean 1% more buyers. So for me, that would be an extra 60 or 70 buyers a year. It only takes one of those buyers to go, I really like this, I'm going to buy another 10 books now. And you might think that's crazy, but from time to time it happens. At least once every month I'll get an invoice from someone, or I'll get 2 or 3 invoices in the space of the week, and they bought 10 or 12 books within a week of buying their first book. So it does happen. So even if it's only 1% difference, it's probably worth doing. So those features are series page. We talked about the strategic ramifications of having standalones or series, but one of the advantages of having a series page is you get your own, of having your books or having linked books in a series, is you get your own series page for those books. That's the first advantage. The next one is if someone clicks on say you've got an ad to the first book in the series, when they click through, it will clearly say somewhere in the description, book 1 of 5 or book 1 of 3 or whatever. And if they click on that, they go through to the series page. On the series page, you've got the option to add all the books to their basket with one click. So that's quite a good thing. The other thing is, if someone buys 1 or 2 books of your series, they will probably get an ad at some kind of time period, and I don't know how Amazon does this. Again, all of their algorithm and how they email and communicate with their customers is all proprietary information, and so we can only guess. But at some stage they'll get an email saying, hey, would you like to consider this book that's from a series you've already started? And it'll be another promotional opportunity for your book. And I had one of these emails 2 weeks ago, and there were 3 books featured in this email. All were from different series. One was a fiction series, one was a non-fiction thing. I even forget what the third one was. So those authors did nothing to get their books in that email in my inbox from a trusted seller who is Amazon, other than add some books to a series page or write some books in a series and then create a series page. So that's one of the tools you can take advantage of. Amazon has a thing called A+ content. That's additional content you can place under all your description and everything, which makes your books look more professional. Most books have it. This is a bit more involved than a series page, but once you've done it a couple of times, it's pretty straightforward, and you can templatize all of the graphics that you can create. You can create them. I did it in Photoshop, but you can create them in Canva, and you can look at and see how authors that you like do it. So A+ content, excuse me, is another way, and you'll find, if you go to YouTube, you'll find lots of tutorials on creating A+ content. The third and last one you can take advantage of is editorial reviews. Now, Amazon's guidelines on this are ignored by most authors on Amazon. So what an editorial review is, it's another feature on your book's selling page, but it's supposed to be for reviews like, so say for example, I've got reviews on one of my non-fiction writing books, say my Lessons on Writing from Ray Bradbury book. Say I've got a review from Stephen King and one from Brandon Sanderson. Those are the kind of, and I'm using an extreme example there, it's supposed to be experts in your market, but those are the kind of people whose reviews should be going on the editorial reviews page. Their guidelines clearly stipulate you shouldn't copy and paste reviews from your customer reviews section, but I see many authors doing this, and technically that's a breach of terms of service, so I wouldn't recommend you do this. I don't do it. And one thing that I talked about doing in, I've forgotten which lesson, it was in part 2, was printing out author copies for yourself and sending them to names in your industry, and just with covering letters saying, hey, I really like your stuff, blah 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 blah, I've written a book, you might be interested in recommending this for your students or whatever, here's a copy, tell me what you think, etc. And usually most people will reply to that. Sometimes their replies are not usable, because they're just too short and they don't have any specific worthwhile information. But a couple of times I've got really good replies from these they're kind of pitches, I suppose, but from this exercise in sending my books out to people, which I've used in various situations to help sell other things, and it just adds that person's status to your book. So if you can, if you're very confident in the quality of your book, make a list of 50 people in your niche who are really important and who everyone in your niche will know. Just fucking send them a copy of your book with a nice letter and see what happens. The worst thing that can happen is they'll throw it in the trash and they'll never see it, and you've wasted $10. Not the end of the world. For the potential benefit, if someone like Stephen King or Brandon Sanderson says nice things about you that you can put in an editorial review, that's worth potentially thousands in terms of book sales and status and all that kind of stuff. So just do it. Find the people, send your best book and see what happens. Lesson 29. So, my biggest mistake. I thought I'd share this one with you. So, I've written 28 books in the bass guitar niche. According to Publisher Rocket, that niche is in the bottom 10% of all niches on Amazon. Now, I didn't find this out until last year because it was a feature of Publisher Rocket that came in maybe 2023. Maybe tail end of 2023. Anyway, it was a feature that came in on one of their updates. If you buy Publisher Rocket, if you're an author and you plan to write multiple books, you should definitely buy Publisher Rocket. It's $97. There's no affiliate link, so you know there's no benefit to me whatsoever if you go and purchase it. I think it's a great piece of software, and there's lots of things you can learn from it. But they had this feature for about 6 months where you could research your competitors' books and you could research niches, and it would give you some some historical data points on how the niche was doing. Was it growing? Was it staying the same? Was it declining? Was it a seasonal niche? All those kind of things. And for 6 months they had another general comment in that feature, and one of them was where your niche ranked in all of the niches on Amazon, and sadly the bass guitar is in the bottom 10%. Had I known that when I started out, I probably would have, well, maybe I would have had second thoughts. I don't know, because although 28 books sounds a lot of that material was converted from courses that were written years ago that I no longer wanted to sell for various reasons, and the information was just revamped and updated. But I think at some stage, maybe at about 10 books, I should have gone, right, now it's time to really move to a more profitable niche and go and follow that a bit more. Anyway, that's just food for thought for you. What you should do is do some data-based market research if you're going to be publishing non-fiction books. For me, for fiction, it's a passion project. So I want to write fiction stories, and while it'd be fantastic if I was getting thousands of sales, I'll be happy if I get 10. So I don't actually care. So that's just so you know. And finally, lesson 30, selling on Amazon is hard if you don't have an email list or a social media presence. If you write a book, put it on Amazon, and you've got no presence, even if you do ads, you're really going to struggle to make sales, and you need to make initial sales to start greasing the wheels of Amazon's algorithm. And there are gurus out there who say you can create 6-figure business without writing a single word, and they say either use AI to write or use ghostwriters. I would advise against using AI, and most of the ghostwriters on the platforms are commodity writers, so you're only going to get very average results at best. And even with or especially with non-fiction books, if you're putting non-fiction books out, don't strive to be average. There's enough mediocre crap in the world. Strive to do something that impacts someone's life in a positive way. Strive to be better than mediocre. Strive to be good. Even better, strive to be great. So take what the gurus say with a very large pinch of salt. What they're saying is possible, but it's unlikely unless you've already built up a following, or you build up a following as you're writing your book, and then you launch the book to them. Having your own following on an email list is the best way to get sales rolling in and get things ticking over. And an example of it being possible, I mentioned him in part 2, a guy called Alex Hormozi, who wrote a book called $100 Million Offers in 2021. At that point in time, I think he had 9,000 social media followers and no email list. It's something like that. The numbers were very small. That book since sold 700,000 or 800,000 copies. But he is the hardest working author around. He's the author's version of James Brown, who always used to say he was the hardest working man in show business. He puts so much content out, so much valuable content, and to really understand how he built his brand and his author list, you'd have to have been following him since 2021, when you could get the Kindle book of it's $100 million offers. I think I said $1 million offers. It's $100 million offers. Initially, it was for sale for 99 cents, so it was an absolutely no-brainer for most people to get it, try it out. But he wasn't trying to make a living as an author. Again, that could be a video on its own, but that's beyond the scope of the Writing Vault. But do research him if you want to see an example of someone who shows you can do it, but you've got to work your arse off. So yes. Okay, closing out. Hopefully you've picked up some pieces of information that you can run with from this series. Even if you're a fiction writer, there are things in here that are of value to you on your self-publishing journey with Amazon. Obviously, if you're going to go with a traditional publisher, then good luck to you. I have very little to say because that's not the route I've chosen to go. One thing I've not mentioned, it's probably the biggest lesson. Don't take readers for granted. Write books that will be transformational. That's whether you're a non-fiction writer or a fiction writer. You want to get emails from people that say, I just wanted to let you know I've just got this book and oh my god, it's the best book I've read in 10 years or something like that. I had an email like this the other week. A guy who read I have a short series of books on the bass playing of Paul McCartney, and you can find this. I got him to very kindly copy and paste his text onto Amazon, so this review is on Amazon. He said something like, these 2 books were absolutely life-changing from me. I've taken everything that I previously bought on the bass guitar over the last 10 years and sold it all on eBay, and I'm just using your 2 books because they have so much information and they are going to guide my journey for the next 10 years or something like that. When you get an email like that, it makes everything worthwhile. You know you've done something, you've changed someone's life, you've affected someone's life positively. As authors, that should be our primary goal, not how many books can we sell, can we make a living. Those things are nice, but changing people's lives, that's so much nicer. So that's probably the biggest lesson, and maybe I'll do another video on that at some stage. But if you are a fiction writer, twisting back to fiction, I've got a resource I'm putting together which aims to be the primary resource for aspiring and budding and frustrated fiction writers. You can see the URL on the screen in front of you. Go check that out. There'll also be a link in the description. If you've got any questions on that or anything in this 3 series of videos, send me an email, paul@deliberate-practice.com. I think this is the 75th or 76th video I'm publishing on the channel, so tracking comments now is getting really hard. So if you really want me to reply to your question or your comments, sending me an email is the best way. Okay, thank you for your time with this video. My voice is just about held out. Hopefully it'll be much finer shape for the next one, and I'll just close out by saying here are some of my recommended videos, and I'll catch you in the next video.